take off at the speed of sound. Bright lights, colors all around. I'm running wild, living fast and free. Got no regrets inside of me. Except that, and that, and that, and that, and that, and that. Here we are, folks. Finally here. It's been a long time, and crap, there's still 2 reviews after this one. Anyway, Sonic Colors. Sonic Colors was released at the tail end of 2010 as a Nintendo Wii exclusive and was the first Sonic game in a long time to receive widespread critical praise. After years of games ranging from okay to unplayable, was Sonic Colors really the game to buck the trend? Yes it was. But let's find out why. The plot for Sonic Colors is really simple, which is how I like it best. Dr. Eggman has built an amusement park in space, known as Dr. Eggman's Incredible Interstellar Amusement Park, and Sonic and Tails come to crash the party, thinking Eggman might have actually changed his evil ways. But it's not long before they find out that Eggman is actually holding these planets hostage and using the alien inhabitants, known as Wisps, as an energy source to power a mind control laser. So, once again, Sonic and Tails must put a stop to Eggman's evil ways and save the Wisps. The game does have a handful of cutscenes throughout, but they're all very lighthearted and fun. Sonic cracks jokes, Eggman fumbles around, and his robot minions come off as idiots. It's a lot of fun with some very funny jokes thrown in. It's a nice change of pace from the serious nature of games like Sonic 06 and even Sonic Adventure 2. I have no problem with a serious story, but let's be real here, guys. It's a blue hedgehog fighting a scientist named Dr. Eggman. It's a silly premise, so if the story's silly, I'm totally down with that, and I think this one does a really good job with it. The gameplay is where this game really shines. It takes the best elements of Sonic Unleashed Daylight stages and improves on them. You can still do all the normal stuff like jump and homing attack, but you can also boost and ground pound and all that fun stuff that was introduced in Sonic Unleashed. The game controls well, and it's a lot of fun to play. I love when the perspective switches from 3D to 2D. It feels like a mix between classic Sonic and Sonic Rush. I feel like the jumping is a little off when in 2D though. The arc seems a little floaty and not as smooth as in classic games. It's not a huge hindrance, but something I noticed. The main gameplay element this time around, however, is in the use of the different wisps to solve puzzles and make your way through the stages. There's 7 wisps in total, 8 if you count the basic boost wisp, and each allows Sonic to perform a different ability at a different time. Each are simple ideas, but add enough to the gameplay to make playing through each stage multiple times a different experience. Maybe you'll take the upper route once with the rocket wisp this time, but next time take the lower route with the drill wisp. The wisps really add a lot of gameplay, and you'll find yourself more and more excited each time you come across a new one. Especially once you find Frenzy. Man, oh man, is that one fun. The stage design is another thing the game really has going for it. Because the game takes place in a interstellar amusement park, all of the stages feel totally unique to a Sonic game. There's the asteroid coaster, where you're jumping from one part of a roller coaster to another and bouncing between asteroids. There's Starlight Carnival, where you run on top of an ever-expanding row of colorful light, but by far my favorite has to be Sweet Mountain. It's a level based entirely around junk food. There's giant ice cream cones and hamburgers in the background, you dash through popcorn that goes flying everywhere, and the loop-de-loops are giant donuts. How can anybody not want to play this in every video game ever made? Like, imagine Ezio in Assassin's Creed jumping through donuts. You want that game now, don't you? It's one of the most creative designs for any Sonic game ever, and I absolutely love it. The other stages are great fun too, and really well designed. Even Aquarium Park, which is the dreaded water-themed world, is a lot of fun to play this time around. Each of the 6 worlds are broken up into 6 acts, and then a boss stage. Usually, each world has about 3 long stages, and then 3 smaller stages. These stages normally involve taking out a certain amount of enemies, or navigating a small portion of the stage using the Wisp abilities. In my opinion, these sections tend to be harder than the main stages, but they're never too hard that you don't want to try them again. Some people might see them as padding, but I don't think any of them are long enough to really be considered that. Each world ends with a boss, and unfortunately the bosses here aren't very fun. In fact, there's very few of them. Sure, each world has their own boss, but each boss repeats in another world, so there's really only 3 in the main worlds. They do try to switch them up a little bit though. For example, the Ferris wheel-like boss that you fight in Tropical Resort has platforms you have to jump on in order to get to the middle to attack his face. When you fight the boss again on Planet Wisp, these platforms are circular and rotate far more, making them hard to get a grip. It's almost required that you use the Spikes ability to beat the boss at all. Not to mention, he fires way more lasers at you. Each variant of the bosses do get harder in later levels, but it's disappointing to see such few bosses in an otherwise very creative game. Though, to the game's credit, the final boss is really cool. Eggman shows up in his Egg Nega Wisp machine, which uses the power of the Wisp to operate an attack. While you run after Eggman, he'll use a bunch of attacks based on the Wisp abilities, such as lasers, spikes, and even the Cube ability. It's not the hardest boss in the world, but it is a lot of fun. I especially like when you team up with the Wisps at the end and send Eggman flying. Though I find it ironic that the game that takes place entirely in space does not end with a supersonic in space battle. Somebody really dropped the ball there. Though you can unlock supersonic in regular play, I just haven't done it yet. So there's no footage. Sorry, Google it. From a technical standpoint, the game is top-notch. The graphics are some of the best on the Wii. Each world is unique and vivid with so much stuff happening in the background. It's incredible. Sometimes I'd rather just look at the stage than play them, such as anytime you're underwater in Aquarium Park. It's very pretty. The audio is top-notch as well. This game has not only one of the best soundtracks of any Sonic game, but also of any game ever made, period. At least, in my opinion. Each track fits the stage beautifully, and I love when they use orchestrated tracks such as with the final battle with Eggman. If you've never played this game, do yourself a favor and download the soundtrack if nothing else. It's amazing. I even love the incredibly cheesy theme song, Reach for the Stars, by Cash Cash. It's some of the most vapid pop junk you'll ever hear, but man, is it fun. This game also marked a change in the voice cast as well. Well, technically, Sonic Free Riders was the first game to feature the new voice cast, but I've never played that, nor do I have any intention of doing so. Gone were the terrible 4Kids voice actors, and in were a couple of new faces. Roger Craig Smith, whom you may know as Chris Redfield from Resident Evil, takes over as the voice of Sonic. He's a nice mix of both Griffith and Ryan Drummond, and fits the role well. He takes some getting used to at first, but I've grown to like him quite a bit. Kate Higgins takes over as the role of Tails, and she is the best Tails voice actor the franchise has ever had. Not only does she know how to act, unlike the Sonic Adventure Tails, but she also sounds like a young boy, and not just a high-pitched, weird she-male. Keep her around, Sega. The only other major character in the game is Dr. Eggman, and he still has the same voice actor. Because, let's be honest, if they were going to keep anybody from the 4Kids cast, it was going to be Mike Pollock. That guy is just too good as Eggman. Sonic Colors is a great game, one of the best in the whole franchise. The gameplay is strong, the Wisps add a nice change of pace to the game without coming off as super gimmicky like the Werehog or Shadow's Guns. The stages are expertly designed, the music is amazing, the graphics are beautiful, the new voice cast is great, the humor and story are refreshing. It's an all-around great game. The only downside is the bosses. They could have been more varied and just more fun to fight, but you gotta take the good with the bad sometimes, and if that's the only bad thing in a Sonic game, I'd say we have a winner. So please, check out Sonic Colors if you haven't already. You won't be disappointed. Real quick, I also want to briefly touch on the DS version of Sonic Colors. When Sonic Colors was first released, Sega decided to also have Dimps, the team behind the Rush games, work on a handheld version, and even though they both share the same name, they're very different games. Like Sonic Rush Adventures, I can't fill a whole review about Sonic Colors. I tried, because it's basically Sonic Rush. The gameplay is identical, except of course for the Wisps. Because of the Wisps and the better stage design, I actually think Sonic Colors is the best Sonic game for the DS. The Wisps add an extra layer of puzzle solving to the game that hasn't been seen in previous games. You actually have to stop and think sometimes, and not just hold boost to win. While it may not be better than Colors on the Wii, it's a great handheld Sonic game that shouldn't be missed. It was even on my top 10 favorite DS games list. That's how good I think it is. So check this one out too if you haven't. It's bound to be really cheap by now. There's 7 Wisps in total, 8 There's 7 Wisps in total, 8 I can't say Wisp, I swear to God.